Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Yusuf Khoja, coming out of Ottawa, Canada. And he's got a fascinating background. He is he's a founder of Resilient Leaders. He's also a keynote speaker and performance coach, helping a variety of clients. And I'm really happy to have him on the show to present what he has, how he helps get the audience and high income earners, doctor, lawyer, dentist. And I'm really happy to have him on. So, Yusuf, welcome.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself, and I'm excited to dive into the fireside.
Thank you. My name is Yusuf Khoja, and I have been described as a catalyst for positive change, which is a description that I welcome with open arms. I think that really comes from understanding a bit of my background. I come from an entrepreneurial family. We were born in Nairobi, Kenya, so a bit of a distance from where we are now. My mother and father were both serial entrepreneurs, and having successful businesses, we were in a way forced to leave our home primarily due to the rise of some uncertainty in neighboring countries. So at a very young age, I was introduced to the idea of change in the world, change in my life, as well as adversity. And as a result, developed initial roots around resilience, which has really been the cornerstone of my life and my passion today. I was fortunate at a young professional age to join my brother as he formed a business in supporting self-development by organizing leadership and wellness events. These featured some remarkable guest speakers, including the likes of Tony Robbins, former President Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, and Dr. Deepak Chopra, to name a few. So I've taken my lessons from over 30 years in this industry to develop some takeaway technologies and guidance to help professionals from all walks of life navigate their future and to be able to tap into their capacity to be resilient and really enjoy a life that has unlimited potential.
And one thing I've always wanted to ask you is gracing the stage with Clinton and Tony Robbins. I met Tony Robbins as well. Amazing. And then like superstars like Oprah. What is the difference? Yeah, like you're successful, I'm successful, people are inner circles. What is the difference between Oprah, Clinton, and our circle? I'm just interested in the key distinctions.
The fair question to ask. I think over the years, I have made note to have conversations with attendees who would come out to these conferences, as well as with many of the presenters. I think the one thing that we need to realize is that we all have a level playing field. The difference between someone like an Oprah, President Bill Clinton, and so forth. Yes, we can look at education, we can look at connections as playing a role potentially in their development and also their fame, so to speak. But fundamentally, they have resources that they're able to utilize consistently and push themselves to achieve new levels of success by really challenging themselves in different ways. I think fundamentally we are all capable of greatness. We really have to define for ourselves what that greatness can mean. And the only way to discover that is to make sure that we don't put limitations on ourselves. So what's the difference? In a word, they simply apply themselves to a higher standard than most. And as a result of that, we can learn from their example. And even if we don't get to that measure, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is, are we finding fulfillment in what we do in our life? Are we setting an example for those, either our family members, our children, or our coworkers? And if we're doing that, then I think we're off to a pretty good start.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to ask you, do we need to achieve like Oprah Winfrey level of success, or do we need to be a billionaire like Bill Gates? It's my question for you is, are the people at that level doing it for ego, or is they have a higher purpose? Are they doing it for themselves? What have you discovered?
I think any time somebody takes the stage when they're at that level, they do have a higher purpose in mind. They could be doing anything. They are very busy, as I'm sure your audience could appreciate. So for them to be able to deliver their message with a sense of passion and conviction, and to be able to focus on leaving specific takeaways or messages to unite people to serve a better cause, that cause being humanity and our planet, then you have to believe, at least I do, that fundamentally ego's popularity set aside, there is a mission that they are embarking on, and this is a channel, one amongst many, I'm certain, that they're using to get that message across.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how they apply themselves, and basically they have a particular skill like Roger Federer, like they have that skill and they apply it and just to be the best that they can be to fulfill their potential and use it as a challenge. The other thing I've noticed among the greats are adversity. And I was just talking with the guest prior to you, and he was talking about he grew up in a orphanage and father and mother left, and he never wanted to be in that position again. So he's like financially successful. And whereas like in high school, like the popular kids or the kids that had instant success, they just live average lives. So, what is it about adversity to opportunity, and how? Why is it that some of the most greatest people have some of the worst kind of traumas? Like they could be abandonment, could be war, could be abuse. Why is that?
That's an interesting question you're asking to give you a specific reason why some people face a greater level or deepness of adversity compared to others. I'm not entirely sure we can say that the universe is taking them on a course to develop a level of understanding about what they're capable of achieving, and perhaps setting an example for the rest of us to realize that as bad as we think we may have it, that in fact the grass is not always greener, and we can learn from those examples. I think it's important to understand that whatever adversity that we face in our own lives, that it can take on a high level of significance, and that even though it may not be as severe as someone else, it's still important. It's still a challenge that we need to look at it as an opportunity for self-growth and development. That's easier than said than done, because it's easy to feel good when things are going well, and it's easy to talk about how we're going to overcome the tough times when they arrive. But if we equip ourselves to be able to deal with these types of situations, and we're really talking about fostering a sense of resilience, then we have the confidence to know that whatever life's challenges are, that we will find a way to cope and to be able to learn, and also to achieve a level of performance in our personal lives, our health, our well-being, our businesses. And as a result of that, we can set an example for others to follow and feel good about a legacy that we can leave for others.
Yeah, that kind of sets the stage. And you talk about transformational leadership. And the first thing is, what is transformational leadership? And can you share an example where you saw a leader transform a challenging situation into a strategic advantage?
I think you're probably speaking about just about every leader in any business or organization who could tell you their stories of how they've accomplished that. I think it's important to understand what is leadership as a word, as a term. It's a very popular word. It can denote different things for different people. Some people see leadership as a responsibility to care for others, or this term authentic leadership is being used in a lot of circles today. Leadership can be defined as power, influence, or a demonstration of a level of success. But I think when you drill down into it, you ask yourself one simple question. If you could use one word to describe leadership, at least for myself, I define it as accountability. And accountability means that we have a responsibility for ourselves and those around us to be able to navigate what life or business throws at us, and to make better inroads in terms of our capacity to understand ourselves as well as those around us. Responsibility, if you look at that even closer, what does that mean? It means we are able to respond, and that is a very empowering term. So I think if people understand leadership from a standpoint of accountability, then they'll realize that we're all leaders, regardless of whether we're running a business or leading a team. We're leaders for ourselves, first and foremost. We're leaders within our families, and we're leaders within our communities. We have accountability to ourselves and the people around us. And if we accept that responsibility, then we can say, the next question we can ask ourselves is, where are my strengths? Where can I contribute in a way that's going to make significant difference? And be honest with ourselves and say, where are the shortfalls? And there's nothing wrong with admitting to shortfalls, because that allows us to further our growth, as well as surround ourselves with people who may have talents that are beyond ours. So perhaps going back to one of your earlier questions in terms of how do leaders overcome these major obstacles and transform, is because they recognize that they can do something to further their knowledge. This principle of continuous improvement, or what the Japanese refer to as a concept of Kaizen, And then they also know they surround themselves with better people. There's been many books written about this. Good to Great talks about the idea if you have the right people on the bus, you can drive that bus anywhere. So make sure that who you decide to surround yourselves with is going to elevate you and give you the chance to really discover a new level of success and raise the bar going forward.
Yeah, that's so well said. And you also talk about the importance of mental health in leadership. And I think, especially after COVID, mental health has come into the picture quite frequently. What are some powerful techniques that can help people build positive mental health that they can start implementing right away?
That is such a significant question to ask today. And in previous years, when I first started in this industry, when you mentioned mental health, it had a bit of a stigma to it. And even perhaps today, it still does. And yet, mental health is a critical part to our overall performance from a professional and personal standpoint. I think when you look at mental health, you have to look at self-care as one of the driving forces. And I've had discussions over the last number of years with leaders about this whole concept of self-care, and I've delivered a number of keynotes on it to corporate settings. And self-care can really be defined in four critical areas that are most common. One would be physical health, and nutrition is a component. Financial well-being is an element of self-care. And of course, this concept of mindfulness or self-awareness is a big part of it. And then the mental health part, or the psychological well-being, can be defined or broken down into two subsets. So to give you an example, over the years, when I was involved in producing these leadership and wellness events and spoke at a number of them, when the Oprahs of the world or Tony Robbins talked about dealing with challenges and finding their resilience, the catalyst for really amplifying their resilience came down to two key tenets of self-care, one being their beliefs and mindset, and the other one being their ability to manage emotions. So when you look at mindset, psychologists define mindset really in two ways. One being a growth mindset, which means people who are focused on possibility. They don't see failure as a reason to give up. In fact, they see it as a challenge, and they use words like the universe works for me, not against me, or anything is possible. If they can do it, so can I. In other words, they're always driven by this sense of more, not for the sake of achieving more, but for demonstrating to others and themselves that you have greatness within you. There's this opportunity to define what that could be. And the other side of a growth mindset, of course, would be a fixed mindset, which means people tend to be fixated on maintaining the status quo and maintaining some elements of complacency. And you listen to conversations with people who are around the fixed mindset, you hear words like, what if I fail? What if I get it wrong? I can't, or I'm too old, or I'm too young. And it's important to note that we are all made up of a fixed and growth mindset. The challenge for us is to figure out how do we support ourselves and those around us in cultivating a growth mindset so it becomes part of our habit or our way of being. And one of the key ways that I've learned over the years is to recognize the power of self-talk, or what many refer to as affirmations, comments that we make to ourselves like, I can do this, or I can't do this. These conversations happen at a subconscious level continuously throughout our days, and they create a storyline which we ultimately use to define our legacy. And it's important to recognize that if the results that are being demonstrated in our lives do not align with what makes us feel happy or fulfilled, then we need to ask ourselves, what's the conversation that I'm having, and figure out a way to change that. One of the easiest ways to change it is to make the decision to change it, surround ourselves with knowledge and information that can push the envelope, and also be aware of who we are surrounding ourselves with. You know, the old saying, we are who we surround ourselves with. And that's an important variable that we need to take assessment for. The other way, of course, of developing the aspect of mental health, or let's call it positive mental health, is the emotional blueprint that I refer to. And emotions really talk about what emotions are we feeling on a daily basis. To give you an example, it's estimated that there are approximately 3,000 words in the English language to describe our emotions. 50% are estimated to be negative, 30% are positive, and 20% are considered to be neutral, which means on an average day, you and I are likely to feel a negative emotion or a positive emotion on a scale of 2 to 1. And when I mention this in conversations or at keynotes or seminars, I invite the audience to take this test themselves. So I'll invite your audience to do the same. For the next 24 hours, keep a mental note or sheet of paper or put it on your PDA device and write down how many emotions do you typically feel on a daily basis. Remember, there are 3,000 that we have in an inventory. So are there emotions like positive emotions like love, gratitude, passion, excitement, forgiveness? Or are they emotions like envy, anger, depression, being mad? Be honest with yourself and ask yourself, what are those emotions that you're feeling and how many of them do you feel? And then at the next stage is really to say, okay, if this is what I'm feeling, this is why I'm experiencing the reality I'm experiencing, then what are the emotions that I need to feel in order to get the reality I want to create in my life? So this is a fun exercise to say, what brings me happiness? What brings me joy? And one exercise that I started doing recently is in my journal. Almost every morning, I will write down what are the emotions I want to feel today that are going to move me towards achieving my goals. And I think if we approach that as a daily habit, we will start to change the things subconsciously that can bring us or attract to us the emotions that are going to allow us to move forward and to feel that positive mental health, so that when life throws its adversity at us, while we may regress a little bit, we know we have in our inventory a set of tools that we can draw from to be able to support that positive mental health going forward.
Yeah, again, very well said. And I want to ask you a follow-up question because you do a lot of coaching techniques, and especially, I think the recent Olympics with Simone Biles and talking about mental health and coaching. What coaching techniques have you found most effective in helping high performers break through to the next level of success, decrease self-sabotage? Is it visualization? Talk about that.
Sure. Coaching towards helping people achieve higher levels of performance, first and foremost, comes down to understanding what are your goals. And I think it's an important question to ask because typically most people will review their goals on average, probably once a year, usually around year's time, and they'll form their resolutions, right? And there's a reason why fitness companies have their busiest months in January or February. It's because that's the time when people will focus on those health goals. But then when you look at April, May rolling around, and I put myself in this boat as well, most people's goals or New Year's resolutions take their wayside or go to the wayside. So I think from a coaching standpoint, what I people to do is understand what are the goals that you have in your life and to look at it from a holistic standpoint, because most people will define goals as the attainment of some material asset, a car, vacation, home, etc., more money in the bank account, or status, power, prestige, influence, respect. And failure is the inability to achieve it or not have enough of those things. In other words, they see goals as a zero-sum game. But the challenge with approaching goals with that mindset is that it's human nature to avoid things that we perceive to be as painful or actually experience pain. So if we think we're not going to achieve the goal, we tend to set the bar lower. So if we don't get them, we don't feel as bad, or we don't set them at all. And we just maintain the status quo. So understanding that goals are not about achieving things, but really goals and setting a goal is a simple way to define our focus. And if we have focus, then there's a greater likelihood our actions will align with that focus to produce the desired outcome. So once we appreciate that goals are an ability to define our focus, it takes the pressure off of having to prove to ourselves that we are success versus a failure. It takes that stigma away from us. So now we have more of a freedom to explore what do we want. The next step, of course, is to identify what do we want. And if we look at goals from a holistic standpoint, we can break them down into toys and adventure, financial goals, career or business goals, relationship goals. These could be from a family standpoint or on a romantic standpoint. And then we can look at things like contribution goals. What do we want to give back to the world, to the community, to others in general? When we have that robust outlook to our life, when we define our life based on so many wonderful parameters, we can then dive into a creative brainstorm to say, what do I want to achieve in these key areas, and be totally childlike in that approach where there are no expectations. This is our life. This is what we want. And when we break it down at that level, our brain goes into a free flow state to come up with ideas. I think it was Steven Spielberg who once said, the universe doesn't shout at us, but it often whispers. And we all have that creativity within us that is actually crying to find time to express itself. And it's through this free flow of goal setting that our mind or subconscious mind can release this to our conscious mind. We can write these down. We can then prioritize and this is purely subjective, what's most important to me in my life, in my business, in my health, etc. And then we can assign the timelines to them in 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, 6 months from now. Where do I want to be in relation to these goals? This makes it more real. It aligns with a schedule that we have been conditioned to adopt since we've been going to school. We're all used to working with schedules, so our mind will automatically work around that schedule. And then by sheer repetition, as I mentioned earlier, having a journal to review these goals, it allows us to zero in our focus so that while our conscious mind is busy living our day-to-day lives, our subconscious mind, through what is called the reticular activating system, or RAS, is automatically focusing on those things in the environment that are going to manifest those goals and push us in that direction. So many times when I've coached people on this particular topic, and even in listening to others who've already achieved their goals, they've always said the same thing, whether it's an athlete or it's a business person or just somebody in their lives. And the phrase is, never in my wildest dream did I ever expect things to be so good or turn out so great. And what that tells me is when anybody commits to incremental improvements towards moving towards their goals, they will have an exponential result. And I'll say that again. Commitment to incremental steps towards achieving any goal will lead to an exponential result over time. That result can be both positive or negative, so you need to be careful where that focus is going. But if it is on the positive ledger, we can be rest assured that even though the result is not showing up in the short term, because a lot of people will give up if they don't see instant gratification or proof, they need to have that faith that this attitude of consistent improvement will ultimately lead them to a life experience, a business experience, a quality experience, which will be far greater than they even imagined possible. I hope that answers your question. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
No, it's really interesting how you described where you place your attention, your focus in the RAS. And then, so the next question I have for you is, I know we're coming to the end. We have around 5 to 7 minutes. And in an increasingly uncertain, highly volatile, highly dynamic environment, both business, culturally, socially, what are practical steps individuals and entrepreneurs can take to cultivate resilience and unpredictability and tolerate uncertainty in these situations?
I think it's really important that you listen to yourself. What is your mind telling you? What is your body telling you? We are very intuitive as human beings, and the development of our psychology over the years has led us to a good place. And what I mean by that is there's legacy in history, culture, and tradition. If you look back to our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors, there is almost a metaphysical power that we've inherited from them. And I know this might sound a little out there for some people, but what I'm getting at is you have to have confidence that if you are unsure what to do in the moment, that there are resources around you, whether it's through your family, it's through your community, through your church, or just in quiet meditation. I believe it was the late Wayne Dyer who once said is that when we allow our mind to be still, the universe speaks to us. That energy that is already in existence and has been in existence for millennia is there for all of us. We have to believe that the answers that we seek will come to us in time. It is important that we have patience. And in the meantime, while we wait for these answers to define themselves or represent themselves in the natural format that they're going to happen. So how does that happen? It's called intuition. It's called a gut feeling. It's called moments of inspiration. Do not negate the value of those moments that occur in your life don't think of them as being insignificant, because that is the universe pushing us in a way to help us manifest what it is we desire most. So self-awareness would be the one thing I would suppose I would leave with everybody is know that you have that greatness within you, and know that the universe is there to support you. And when you are in doubt, seek out the help from those that are around you. Read books, listen to seminars, great podcasts like this one, and take time to meditate. And eventually you'll find your way forward. It's almost a virtual guarantee. It will happen. When it will happen, that's the mystery. So you have to have a little bit of patience along the way.
Yeah. How can people find you and learn more about you and reach out to you and check out the great work that you're doing?
Thank you. The easiest way is to visit my website. It's www.resilientleaders. So that's resilientleaders.ca. You'll find it a bit about my work, some of my background, and there's also a gift I'd like to offer your audience members. I've written an ebook. It's called The 5 Keys to Becoming a Resilient Leader. It summarizes some of the discussion topics we've had here today. It's a free download. You do not have to enter your email address. You don't have to sign off on anything. Just go ahead. It's a PDF version, and there's exercises you can do right in the book. So it's my gift to you. And I thank all of your audience for taking the time to listen in today.
Thanks so much, and keep up the great work. And for the audience, be sure to follow Yusuf's socials. Give him you can follow, check out his work. All these resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks again for coming on and providing your invaluable expertise and guidance.
Chris, it's been my pleasure, and I wish you a wonderful day.